I'm Michael Clark. I'm sort of the project developer here at Cloud on Tap, and I'm making this video sort of just just to teach you how to use Data Loader, how to install it on your computer, how to log in, how to upload data into Salesforce. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and show you right now. So if you're logged into a Salesforce org, what you want to do just to get the initial setup done is just go to the gear icon in the top right and just go ahead and click that and then click setup. And then once you're in there, you're just going to want to search for Data Loader. And then you're just going to click on that link right here. And then what this is going to do is it's just going to show you the Data Loader page, give you a little description on it, and then it's going to offer you the download links for Windows and then the instructions. Same thing for Mac. So I'm going to go ahead and open up those instructions. And then I've already downloaded the Data Loader on my computer, but I will show you what that looks like. So when you open up these instructions, it's basically going to give you about 6 steps to follow. So you need to install Java Runtime version 11 or later. So what you want to do is just right click this and open it into a new tab. And what I do is I just scroll down, and then what I like to do is make sure it's filtering off Windows. That's all good. And then what we will do is you would download this MSI file. So once that's done, you would run that file and basically just confirm all the settings. And then the next thing you would do is hit the download Data Loader for Windows. So that's going to download as well. And then, so since I've already done that, I can just show you what that looks like. So when you download Data Loader, it's going to come in this compressed zip file. So what you will do is you'll need to unzip it. So I use 7-zip. You can use just the default extract all, but I'm going to go ahead and do 7-zip and just extract that to its own folder. So we will have that here. So that would be step 3. Just right click the zip file and extract all. And then the next step would be to double click the install bat file in those folders. So if we go back, you would double click this file, run it. I'm pretty sure it's going to pop up a console. I think all you really have to do is hit yes. That's considering if you've done everything correctly. And then you would choose where to install it. And then, just specify if you'd like to set up an icon on your desktop. So that's kind of it for, the setup. Just getting that Java runtime installed and then downloading Data Loader, extracting it, running that install file, just sort of finishing up those initial setups. So once all that's done, you should see that on your, it should be on your computer. For me, it is on my home page. So it is going to be right here. If I go ahead and double click that, we can see that I have Data Loader and it's working. So, all the initial setup is done. So now that we have Data Loader, I will show you shortly here how to just upload that data, but the main thing with Data Loader is sort of logging in. So when you log into Data Loader, you need to specify which Salesforce org you're going to log into. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Insert. You can click any of these, but it'll basically ask you to log in. There's sort of 3 different ways to log in, technically 2. So the first one is OAuth. This one is the easiest. So what you do is, depending on what environment you're in, you will select that. So for this instance, we're in production. And then I would click login. From there, it's just going to ask you to log in. So let me just do that real quick. And I may need to look for that password real quick. All right, and then it'll send me a verification code. So let me grab that. It sent that to my email. If I go ahead and paste that, you're just going to want to hit allow. That's all good. And then it'll verify it, and then it will confirm that your login is successful. So that's sort of the first way to log in, just using the OAuth. I will show you the next one now. So I'm just going to hit log out and then redo this. So yeah, that was OAuth. The next one is password authentication. It's sort of the same thing as the last one. It's a little bit different. It doesn't really pop up that prompt or anything. Sort of just ask you to type it in. So what I will do, so this automatically defaulted to the org I'm in, but I would advise to always just put it as login.salesforce.com. If you're going to upload into a sandbox, that URL would look like this, the test.salesforce.com. But since we're logging it into a production org, we're going to use just the normal one. So that's all good. And then what you will want to do is just do username and your password. So I said there's 3 ways to log in. There's really only 2, but there's 2 different ways. There's this one and then this one, but there's 2 different ways that you can log in through password authentication. So the first one would be username and password, but this requires you to add a security token. So you would put in your password plus the security token added onto it. That's a little bit, it gets a little bit annoying just trying to keep track of them. So one thing I advise is you can do a different way. You can just do username and password, but to bypass the security token, what you will need to do is you will need to go into the Salesforce that you're working out of, go to network access, and then from there, it'll allow you to add the IP range that you are at, or the IP address that you are at. So what I will do is just do what is my IP, pop open this trusty website, just copy this address and put it in. And now my IP is added to the Salesforce org. So, whenever you log into a Salesforce org, it'll always ask you for a verification code. But if you add in your IP, it'll never ask you for the verification code. And same thing with data loader. It won't ask you for security token. It'll just allow you to log in. So now that I've added my IP, I can click log in. It's telling me destination URL does not work. So just do troubleshoot this again. Let me do this. All right, so it's not working. That's totally fine. I just wanted to show how to log in general using password authentication. For this demo, we're just going to continue along with the OAuth. So let me just log back in that way. And again, I still need to grab that password. Perfect. So now we have access. We are logged into data loader. That is perfect. So now really what we want to do is we want to find the file that we would like to upload, prep the file, clean the file for anything that is incorrect, anything that's missing. So let's go ahead and just start into that. So typically how data loading works is our clients will need data uploaded into Salesforce. They will provide us with those files. Typically they need to provide us with clean data. There is instances where they don't clean the data and it's sort of our responsibility just to make sure that they're not losing any data and that it's being brought over. So this is the file, the demo file that we have. And basically we're going to act like a client has sent this to us. Basically, they said, here's a file of our accounts and contacts in one file. So basically the issue here is accounts and contacts are 2 different objects. We need to do 2 different files for these uploads, but everything is stored in one file. That's totally fine. We will just have to work from here. So one thing I like to do is just go through and make sure, we already have fields established, look through the data, make sure everything's going, everything's clean. So if I look through this, I don't really see any issues with anything. I do notice that this phone number has words in it that could be an issue. So typically what I would do is I would clean that out. Maybe just since that's not a valid valid phone number, just take it out. But we're gonna leave that for now, just because I'd like to show how to address the errors when you upload bad data. But everything seems good here. Email addresses look normal. Phone numbers look good. Websites look pretty good. So Pretty clean file overall. Typically, you won't see clean files like this. Sometimes you do. Um, but one thing that we do need to do just for prep work before we insert um, is we need to split the name into first name and last name. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So what I do is I highlight the column. After it, hit insert. I'm going to go ahead and redo it. And then I would name first name and then last name. And what we need to do on our end is use Excel formulas to break those up. So I will use some of the formulas that I have, and we will attach these as well in the video, or just give them to you. So let me go ahead and start with the first name. Basically, this is a sort of default formula that we have. I store this in a notepad document, so you need to edit it a little bit on your end. So one thing I can see is that this formula is looking at A2. We really want it to look at B2. So I'm going to go ahead and change that B2 there and then B2 here. And then we can see that it came over perfectly. We only got Peter. So what I will do now is just drag that down and it'll just auto-populate the rest. So that's all perfect, but one thing we will need to do is that these are still being stored as formulas. As I'm clicking into each one of these, you can still see the formula above. We want that to be as values. So what I do is I copy the column, copy it, and then you will hit this paste as values option. What that does is it converts those formulas into the text that is being calculated. So we can see instead of formulas now, we are seeing the actual text. So let's go ahead and just repeat that process for the last name. And then just change those to B2. Perfect. So you see that Parker comes over and all the other ones come over as well. One thing I noticed here, George W. Bush has a middle initial. So what we can do here is, since he's the only one, you can ignore it, but I will just address it here. So I'm just going to put that W here, and then, like I said, we need to copy the column, paste it as values, and now I can go in and just remove that W. Perfect. So everything should be prepped, but like I said, this file contains accounts and contacts. Two sort of ways we can do this. We could save one file as account, one file as contact, but I'm going to show you the little bit more advanced way to make this easier on yourself, a lot faster. So when uploading accounts and contacts, accounts always have to go first because they are the parent object in this relationship. So you have accounts, and then you have multiple contacts below. So what we will need to do is do the account insert first and then the contact insert second. With that contact insert, we need to tie the relationship to the accounts that we inserted earlier. I'll show you that. But one thing we need to mark is what fields are going to which objects. This field is obviously going to go to account. So what you can do is just change the name. So instead of company, we'll do account name. This one we're going to ignore because we are going to be using first, middle, and last name. So I will just put, you can put whatever you like. I usually put Z, and I'll show you why, but just put that in there so that it tells you to ignore it. First, middle, last name, that's good. Title is good, phone, email. All of these are good. Most of these are standard fields in Salesforce, so we don't have to worry about building them. The only field that doesn't exist in Salesforce is this first contact date. So the main question here is when you're uploading data, especially a file like this, is where do we store it? Do we put it on the account or on the contact? For this instance, it's going to be on the contact because it's that first contact date. You could put it on both if you really wanted, but we're just going to put it on the contact. So before you even upload data, you're going to want to make sure that that field is created before you start to upload, or else you won't be able to upload that specific information. So if we go back to the Salesforce that I was in, I'm going to go back to the object manager, and I'm just going to look up the contact object, and then from there, I'm just going to go to fields relationships, and I'm just going to go ahead and make that first contact date. And now that that is created, we can go ahead and continue. So that is in Salesforce now. So every field is basically covered with. We have, this is for the account. These will be for the contacts. This is contact as well. The phone ones can be both. So this will go to the account and the contact. Email is going to be at the contact level, and then the address will be on both as well. Description will be account. But you will, the more you do this, the more you'll get used to it, the more you'll see what is a standard field, what needs to be a custom field like this one. So now that the file is prepped, we are ready to go. So the way that I like to do it is I will just save, you can save this as the account insert. So I will hit save as, and in my folder, just list it as the account insert. Go ahead and hit save. So now that we are prepped and ready to go, we can go ahead and start with the account insert. So if I select, once you log in, it's going to ask you to select the data objects. So just going to select the account. One thing to note is if you are doing an object that is not, a standard one, and you don't see it among this list, just make sure that this is checked. This is going to show every Salesforce object in there. So you can see that the list got a lot bigger after I checked it. And then if I uncheck it, that list gets a lot smaller. So we select account. Now we need to choose the file. So I'm going to choose that file that I just saved. And it'll just take me a second to find that real quick. So I'm going to choose that account insert file that I just saved. And then from there, we'll hit next. And what this is going to do, it's going to initialize the file. Make sure basically, the file is set up correctly. There's no, missing columns or anything amongst that. But if it works, it'll say it succeeded, and it'll tell you how many records will be inserted after this upload. So basically, it's going to tell you your mapping. So you're going to have to choose map the columns in the Excel spreadsheet to the fields in Salesforce. So I'm going to hit create or edit a mapping, and this will pop up. The columns. So these are all the columns in the Excel file, and then these are all the fields in Salesforce. So one thing that you can do is hit auto match. What that'll do is sort of look at the Salesforce column or the Excel column and look for the corresponding Salesforce field. So you can see, if it's name description and there's a field name description, it'll pull it over. I would advise to use this by your best judgment. Sometimes it doesn't work, or the columns aren't named perfectly, but that's totally fine. So we have the name, address we will need to find. So we're going to put that as the billing street. If we look back at the file, it is actually all of them. So one thing that we would want to do there is we would want to make sure that we split those up perfectly. So if I do wrap text, we can see that there's more information there than needed, more than just the street. So that is another one that I forgot to do on my end. So we're going to go ahead and do it now, but basically we need to prep the files. So I'm going to do street, city, state, and then I believe we have zip code and country. So let me just make sure that this is all set up correctly. And just for the sake of this demo, since all of these fields are the same, or all of the addresses are the same, I'm just going to copy and paste. But you would basically want to take the same approach that you took with the first name and last name by just splitting them up accordingly. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to make this a lot quicker and just go ahead and copy all of these all the way down. So now that that has been updated, we have saved the file, but what we need to do is the data loader has not recognized that yet. So what I will do is I will just cancel this process and I will just start over. This typically happens, as you're working through and mapping, you'll notice things like that where, oh, you're missing the field, or you forgot to clean up this section of the data. So it's kind of just a constant process. So we're going to go back to that creator edit, and then we're going to hit the auto match. We can see that the street and the state, zip code, the country has all been added since we've added those columns in the Excel sheet. So we're just going to make sure that we add those in. So I'm just going to go down the list, get billing city, billing country. Just keep going through these. We're not going to do these ones because those are all contacts. And then let me look for the other phones. And you can sort, these by the name, the label, or the type. I'm going to sort by type so I can find phone. I don't see a mobile phone, so we can skip that one. Phone is mapped, rating is mapped. Revenue, we will do annual revenue. And then state, we can just finish the billing part of that. Billing state, billing street, title, that's contact information. And then we would need the billing zip code. And then this is, like I said, that is that field that we don't need to map. The reason why I do the ZZ is so that you can sort by it and know that the ones that are sorted to the bottom or to the top you can ignore. But now that we see this, we can see that everything is mapped. For these ones, this one was not mapped because we mapped it separately through these different columns. And then these ones were not mapped because they pertain to the contact. So one thing to do is just save that mapping. Because like I said, this happens a lot where, you might miss something, so you need to close it, redo it in Excel, and then redo this step. But if you save that mapping, one thing that you can do, and I'm going to just clear the mapping for the time being, you can see that the mapping went away. All that work I did is just gone. But since I saved that mapping, instead of doing create or edit, I can just choose an existing mapping, select that, and it remembered everything that I did. But you need to remember that this only works when the column headers are the same. So typically, saving that mapping only works when you're sort of using the same file that's sort of been built out over and over. So now that that is done, we can go ahead and hit next. What this is going to ask, it's going to ask you to select a folder on your computer to store the success and error files. The success and error files basically, once you run this, two files are created, the error file and the success file. The error file will list by row which rows didn't go into Salesforce, and there will be a column on the end named error, and it'll tell you why that row didn't go through. And then the success file will show you the successes that went through into Salesforce. It'll tell you the ID of that record and also that it's been created. So we're going to go ahead and go back to that folder where I have the account insert and account mapping. And I'm going to create a new folder, and what I like to call them is the account insert, and then I do S&E. S&E stands for success and error. So now that I created it, I can hit browse, and I just need to find where I stored that file. We can see that account insert S&E. So now that I found it, I can hit finish, and this is going to prompt me saying you've chosen to insert new records. Click yes to begin. Do you want to proceed? So we're going to hit yes, and we will see basically what happened. So the operation is fully completed. There were 18 successful inserts and 2 errors. You can view them here, but we can just go to that folder. One thing to note on your end is I would just, on a piece of paper or however you would like to track it, is just write this down. I did a total of 20 records. You can look 20 total, but only 18 went through. 2 were errors, so you need to write down 2 accounts didn't go through. So what we will do now is we will just open up that error file and just address the errors, see what went wrong, and then from there we can just address, we can re-upload them once they've been addressed. So like I said, it'll put in the rows that didn't go through, and then at the very end it'll tell you, it'll give you a column with an error. So this is the error column, and it'll say annual revenue invalid number 900,000, annual revenue invalid number 8,000. So this is a very common error. The reason that this error happens is when you're inserting into a number field, you cannot have anything like a column or a dollar sign. So what you want to do is just highlight that column and then change it to number. And since this is a sort of a rounded number, we can remove those decimal places, but you can leave them. So now that we've addressed the errors, what we want to do is upload these errors now since they're done. So what I do on my end is just go back to that insert, and let me just hide everything. Go back, select account, and then we're going to hit browse. Instead of selecting the account insert, we're going to select that error file that we created. And then it'll tell me it contains 2. That's perfect. That was how many errors there were. And then we're going to choose that existing mapping that we created earlier so that we don't have to waste time on this step. We can see everything came over. And then we need to select another folder. You can use the existing folder. So you can use this existing folder to keep doing it. One thing to note is these files aren't named perfectly. It just puts error, a bunch of numbers. So, I like to just do, part 2. So I can tell that this is part 2 of the account upload. So if I go to browse, I'm just going to select that part 2 folder and hit OK. So I'm going to go ahead and hit finish. It says you have chosen to insert new records. Click yes to begin. So we're going to go ahead and hit yes. This happens. Sometimes, you address the errors and then you think it's ready for upload. You upload it. There's still more errors. So just going to hit OK and just look at what the errors could be this time. And if we scroll over, we will see this error. It says use one of these records. This is another common error. This basically tells us that this account already exists in Salesforce. So, you're creating a duplicate. So it's sort of telling you, hey, don't create this. This record already exists. So what we want to do on our end is just confirm that record exists. So if we go back into Salesforce, and I'm just going to search that account name, we can see it doesn't exist. So not sure what the issue is there. And then if we search the Parker Industries, we can see the United States government is in there. So that's perfect. So we can just check that, hit details. We can see it was already uploaded today by myself. So that was something, I didn't do on my end. What I should have done on my end when I did this account insert is, double check that there weren't any duplicates in here. So if we highlight this, we can see that United States government was a duplicate. So that's one that we don't want to do. But for the Parker Industries, I'm not sure why that isn't, showing up in here. I think one reason why it's not appearing is because Salesforce does, they do their duplicate rules based off of many things. They do it based off the name. They do it based off phone numbers. They do it based off addresses. But for this instance, we can see that Parker Industries is not a duplicate. So what I do on my end is I would just go to the duplicate rules. So we go duplicate rules. We're just going to want to turn off the account one just for this time being. But we only want to make sure that the United States government record goes in. We don't want Parker Industries, or no, other way around. We only want Parker Industries to go in. We don't want United States government to go in. So I'm going to save this as a separate file. Let me just go back. I'm just going to name this as account error insert instead, actually. So just going to delete that United States government row because we don't need it, but we do want to insert the Parker Industries. So if I select account and then I do the account error insert and hit next, it should say 1. You get this issue sometimes, a duplicate column is found. Just hit yes. As long as it succeeds, you should be fine. Your operation will contain 1 record. That's perfect. You want to choose that mapping again, and then we just want to make that part 3 folder. So I'm just going to name it part 3, success and errors. And then I just want to make sure I select that file. Perfect. So we can see that, there was 1 total record and we have 1 successful insert, 0 error. So we are completely done with the account side of this upload. So we really just need to focus on the contact side. So let's just start there. So what I'm going to do on my end is I'm going to start with a completely blank sheet, but we are going to use those success files that were generated through the account insert because those give us the record IDs of the account that we really need for this insert. And I will also show you the other way that you can do this as well. So let me just go ahead and start opening up these success files. So if we get this success file, we can see everything was in there, but this is the important column we need, the account ID column. So let me change that to account ID. So we're going to copy this whole sheet and we'll paste it in here. But we want to make sure that we paste in the other success files because we have run this multiple times. We just want to make sure we're getting everything. So if we go to part 2, open up that success file, there is no successes, that's fine. And then we want to go to part 3. Successes, perfect. And we'll just paste that one in here. And then one thing to remember, we deleted a column earlier, that government, United States government column. It was a duplicate, but it had a different contact name. So we do want to find that one. So let me go back to the error file real quick. And we want this United States government one. The issue here is that it does not have that account ID in there. So that is something that we will have to fix on our end. So what you could do, I see that account ID right there. I can just go ahead and paste it. So I just see the United States government, so I just copied that down here. But there is another way, when it comes to finding those IDs for relationships, and that's called a VLOOKUP. So I will show you that right here. So I'm just gonna name this VLOOKUP. And the way that this works is we will run a report out of Salesforce, and I will create that right now. And basically what we want to do is we want to look at the account name and return the account ID right here. So we will need a report that has those two in there. So we're going to do the account object for a report. I'm going to do all accounts. I'm going to do all time. I'm going to remove the columns just so I can start with a fresh report. I'm going to do name, and then I'm going to do ID. And then once that's done, I can just save this as the account export and hit save. Run that report. And so now we should have what we need. We want the account name along with the account ID. So let's go ahead and start with that. So now that I have exported it, what we will do is we will highlight all of this, copy it, and we're going to paste it into a separate sheet on that same document that we're working off of. And we're going to use a formula to bring in the data on that second sheet. So let me just grab my VLOOKUP formula. I'm going to go ahead and paste it here. Like I said before, this requires some manipulation. So instead of looking at A2, we want to look at B2. And what this formula does here is it'll reference what's in B2, which is what we specified, and it's going to look at sheet 2, and it's going to look for that name specifically. And when whatever it finds in sheet 2, so for example, if this was the name and it finds it there, it'll return the value that's next to that value in column B. So that's what we just need to specify here. We need to specify the length of this. So we want to make sure that we get this whole table. So we just need to make sure that that formula is working. So we need to change it from sheet 1 to sheet 2. So we just change that here. Sheet 1 to sheet 2, make sure we're referencing the right sheet. And then we just want to make sure that we're referencing the right length. So this goes down to row 36. So we go back here. We don't want it to be 14. We want it to be 36. Do it again, and once I hit enter, you should see that ID. So if we just go ahead and drop, all of those ID comes down. Same thing as before, just copy it and then paste those values. So that is one way to VLOOKUP. So you could do either both ways. You could either use the success files with those account IDs to do your contact insert, or you could just use the initial file the client sent you and just use a VLOOKUP. Either or, whatever is your preference. So now that we have that account relationship in there, we're going to save this file. And then let me just go back. And then one thing I meant to mention earlier, data loader only takes CSV files. So whenever you're uploading into data loader, make sure it is in the CSV format. So now that we have that saved, everything is prepped. We are ready to upload into Salesforce. So we're going to hit insert, select that contact object, and then we will choose the file, choose that contact insert file. An empty column is found. Would you like to continue? We're going to hit yes. So this is an instance where it just doesn't work. So what you need to do is go back to your file, see where the issue is. So I think it's going to be on the end. Yeah, and so the reason here, let me just highlight everything. The reason this occurred is there is data outside the table. So what I do is just hit delete, and that should fix that issue. So if we go back to data loader and hit insert, what you will want to do is just make sure you select the newly saved file and hit next, and now we have no issues. So now we just need to do the mapping for the contact. What we will do here is just hit auto match. So account ID is matched up. We don't need to do account name because that's part of the account ID. Address, that's not one we're going to do because it's the full address. We already split it up. So we'll do the mailing city, mailing country, description, that's good, email. We can see that first contact date, that field that I created came over. That's perfect. First name, last name, no middle name. Let's see if we can find that. Okay, so there's no middle name. So what we could do, there's only one, that George W. Bush one, but you can just push the middle name into last name, or you can push the middle name into first name, however you prefer. Mobile phone, that's good. These pertain to the account, so we don't have to worry about those. And then we just need to finish up the mailing ones. So mailing street. This status field came from just uploading it, so that's not useful for this. State we can match. VLOOKUP, we could use this one, but we already have the account ID up there. But if you map the account ID here as well, it would work. Website, that was on the account level, and then zip code. So let me just make sure I get zip code. And that should be good. The rest of these fields don't matter. So we hit save mapping. We're just gonna name this one as contact mapping. Hit OK. And then we will just want to create that folder for the contact successes and errors. And then just hit next, choose that file, contact insert success and errors, and hit finish. Perfect. So one thing that I like to do on my end is just confirm in Salesforce if that data came over correctly. So let's open up a success file. I'm going to copy that ID for the contact, open up Salesforce, and just paste it into the URL. And that should bring us to that record page. So we can see Tony Stark is in here. The account name of Stark Industries, so we can see that we mapped that correctly to the correct account. We can see that he has a title, he has a phone number, an email, first contact date is in there. So all of that came over correctly, and we can even look at the account as well, see that all that information came over as well. See the email, see the phone number, the rating, the annual revenue. So all that's perfect. The address came over good. So yeah, that's basically data loader. One thing to note though is we turned off the duplicate rules when we did this, so we just want to make sure we turn those back on. And that should be about it. You know, we uploaded this data in there. I think that's, you know, all you really have to do. And that should be it for this sort of demo. So hope that was helpful.